In Unit 1, we learned how to identify and use supporting details within literary and informational text to support claims, draw conclusions, and identify relationships that connect different ideas within a text. In Unit 2, we're going to take what we've learned about supporting details and apply them to identify and understand, analyze, and explain key ideas within literary and informational texts. In this lesson, we're going to be examining our first key idea, which is known as the main idea. The main idea, or sometimes referred to as the central idea of a text, is the main point that an author is trying to make. In other words, the main idea is the most important idea within a given passage. To help us understand this, let's take a look at a passage entitled African Wild Dogs, Ultimate Predators, and see if we can identify clues in the passage that help us determine what the author's main idea is. Many books, papers, and television shows have created an image of the African wild dog as the ultimate predator. According to these sources, the dog's coordinated teamwork and their unusual endurance help them catch about 80% of their prey. A 2012 study tested that notion. Researchers fed a pack of wild dogs with special collars that recorded the dog's positions and speeds. The data that the collars recorded allowed the researchers to learn what the dogs did when they weren't being observed. The results provided a surprising contrast with the dog's fierce reputation. The dogs never used teamwork in their hunts. They chased their prey over short distances as opposed to long runs, and instead of 80%, they brought down only about 16% of their prey. We are given two options for a main idea. Our first option is African wild dogs have a reputation as fierce hunters who work in teams, but new data suggests otherwise. The second option is a study shows that African wild dogs catch about 16% of their prey and do not use teamwork in hunting. So let's take a look at the passage again and see what details the author presents to us and use those to determine what the main idea is. The passage begins by providing us with information that we really already know, or as we find out, that we thought we knew about African wild dogs. So we are told that because of books, papers, and television shows that we have this image of the African wild dog as the ultimate predator. And the author goes on to say that according to these sources, the dog's coordinated teamwork and their unusual endurance help them catch about 80% of their prey. So this is the information we think we know. So they use coordinated teamwork. They have unusual endurance that help them catch 80% of their prey. So, in 2012, scientists did a study to find out if this was true, and what they found out was surprising. So first, we find out that they never use teamwork. We find out that they chase prey over short distances. And then we find out that they bring down 16% of their prey. So this is the exact opposite of what we have been told in books and papers and even seen on television shows. But there's some key words here that help us determine our main idea, and it's important that we point those out. So we're told that the results provided a surprising contrast. with the dog's fierce reputation. So contrast gives us this idea of it's the opposite of what we thought. We think one thing is true, but the reality is that it's not true. To further drive home that point, the author uses as opposed to and instead. So what's the author getting at here? In short, what we thought we knew about African wild dogs is not reality. So everything that we thought we knew is not it. So when all of the evidence and the details is considered, we can conclude that the author's main idea is that African wild dogs have a reputation as fierce hunters who work in teams, but new data suggests otherwise. So our first statement is the main idea. The second statement is just simply rehashing the details that we've already been presented. This particular statement actually would serve as a good summary statement about the study, but it doesn't provide us with a good, solid main idea. The first statement does. Now that we've learned how to use the details within a passage to determine the main idea, let's practice with another passage about rhinos. Poachers in Africa are killing large numbers of rhinos for their horns. Rhinoceros horns, valued for use in traditional medicines in Vietnam and China, can fetch as much as $36,000 a pound. Officials have tried to protect the rhinos. They have created fenced areas for the animals, patrolled their habitats, and even tried removing their horns. Despite these efforts, the number of rhinos in Africa has been dwindling. One creative solution to the poaching problem is to remove the rhinos from Africa altogether. Ray Dearlove, the founder of the Australian Rhino Project, came up with a plan to relocate 80 rhinos to a safari park outside Adelaide, Australia, where a breeding herd can be established. So based on the information in this passage, let's see if we can determine which of our two options is the main idea. Our first option states, officials have tried to protect African rhinos from poachers by guarding their habitats and removing their horns, but their efforts have been largely unsuccessful. And then, the next option, because other attempts to protect African rhinos from poachers have failed, the Australian Rhino Project is relocating the rhinos to Australia. So let's see if we can get some clues from the passage to help us determine what is the author's main idea. Well, first, we can look at the title, because the title will sometimes give us clues. In this case, it is Saving the Rhinos. Okay, so we know that this passage has something to do about saving the rhinos. So it starts out by telling us the reality of the dwindling population of rhinos in Africa. And it tells us why the rhino is such a sought-after animal. You know, we're specifically told that their horns are valued for use in traditional medicines in Vietnam and China, and they're worth a lot of money. People pay a lot of money for rhinoceros horn. So then the author tells us that officials have tried some different ways to protect the rhinos. It says that they've created fenced areas, patrolled habitats, and even tried removing their horns. But these efforts have not worked, okay? So this is what they've tried. And then it says, despite these efforts, the number of rhinos in Africa has been dwindling. So everything that they have tried thus far has not worked. But then it goes on to provide us with another solution. So they're getting creative. This solution is to remove the rhinos from Africa altogether. And then the author goes on to explain what this idea is. That the Australian Rhino Project is planning on relocating 80 rhinos to a safari park outside Adelaide, Australia, for the purpose of establishing a breeding herd. So they're hoping that by taking the rhinos out of Africa, putting them in a new location where it will be more difficult to poach them, will allow the population to grow. So based on these clues, which of our options is the best example of the main idea? So first, officials have tried to protect rhinos from poachers by guarding their habitats and removing their horns, but their efforts have been largely unsuccessful. Okay, so this does kind of give us a summary of what they've tried and let us know that it's not working. However, if you look at the other sentence, it says, because other attempts to protect African rhinos from poachers have failed, the Australian Rhino Project is relocating rhinos to Australia. So what is the author's main idea? Well, the second sentence provides us with a good key point that the author is making about the attempts to save the rhino. We already know that the other attempts have failed, but we have a new idea that we're going to try. So this is what the author is presenting. In this case, because other attempts to protect African rhinos from poachers have failed, the Australian Rhino Project is relocating the rhinos to Australia is the main point of this passage. Why? The passage is about saving the rhinos. So what are they doing to save the rhino? They're relocating them to Australia. Therefore, the second option is our main idea. Let's practice identifying the main idea with another example. Supporting biliteracy. There are many good reasons to learn a second language. A second language can improve your understanding of your native language, open the door to new job opportunities, and help you learn about other cultures. Yet American students are less likely than European students to study foreign languages in school. To address this gap, several states have begun doing more to encourage biliteracy, the ability to read and write in two languages. California, New York, and Illinois are among the states that have passed laws establishing a state seal of biliteracy. A seal of biliteracy shows that a student has achieved proficiency in a second language. Supporters of the seal say that they honor the importance of second language learning. The seals also provide colleges and future employers with evidence of students' abilities. So what is the main idea of this passage? Our options are fewer American students than European students learn a second language, so some states are promoting the study of foreign languages. Or, although second language learning is important, students in the United States are less likely than those in Europe to learn a second language. So again, we're looking for the key point that the author is trying to get across. What is his or her purpose in writing this passage? Again, as in our last example, pay attention to the title. supporting biliteracy. Okay, and we're told in the passage that biliteracy is the ability to read and write in two languages. So we need to think, what is the author trying to get across here to show how biliteracy is being supported? Well, we're given the detail that American students are less likely than European students to study foreign languages in school. Okay, so here we're being presented with a problem. As you recall in the first unit, we have our problem-solution relationship. This is an example of that. So our problem is that American students don't really want to study a foreign language. So how is this problem being addressed? Well, we are told to address the gap. So here's where our solution's coming in. That California, New York, and Illinois are among states that have passed laws establishing a state seal of biliteracy. And that seal of biliteracy shows that the student has achieved proficiency in a second language. What proficiency means is that they are able to read, write, and carry on a conversation in a second language that is not their original. So supporters of the seal say that they honor the importance of second language learning, and then they also provide colleges and future employers with evidence of the student's abilities. So, as with our last example, which of our two options provide the best example of the author's main idea? Again, we need to remember what is being done to support biliteracy. When we take all of the evidence presented in the details into consideration, we can clearly see that our second option does not truly get at the heart of the main idea. It states, although second language learning is important, students in the United States are less likely than those in Europe to learn a second language. Now, this statement is just simply presenting the problem. It doesn't really show how biliteracy is being supported. But when you look at the first statement, it says that fewer American students than European students learn a second language, so some states are promoting the study of foreign languages. Okay, so we're presented with the problem, but we're also presented with how it is being addressed. What is being done to support biliteracy? Therefore, fewer American students than European students learn a second language, so some states are promoting the study of foreign languages is the main idea of this passage. Another key idea that we can identify through the use of details in a text is the claim or argument that an author is making in a passage. Let's take a look at this example. Dawn to dusk. Sunrises and sunsets are some of nature's most awe-inspiring displays. Their brilliant hues and golden light have fascinated artists and sky watchers for centuries. For example, many famous paintings depict the shades of color seen in sunrises or sunsets. To enjoy these same colors, some people plan activities so that they can view the sun rising or setting. It is clear that each event is striking in its own way, but overall, sunrises are more beautiful than sunsets. Part of the reason a sunrise is more beautiful than a sunset is because our eyes perceive them as more attractive. If you wake up early to watch the sunrise, your eyes are still adjusted to seeing in the dark. Because your night vision is sharper than your daytime vision, your eyes can pick up each and every color of the sunrise. When viewing a sunset, meanwhile, your eyesight has been adjusted to daylight for many hours. Plus, your eyes may be tired from hours of active use throughout the day. So your eyes are not able to easily see each color in a sunset as it appears. The quality of the air also makes sunrises more beautiful than sunsets. Pollutants like smog and soot cloud the air throughout the day. By the time the sun sets, there is often a filmy haze in the atmosphere. This haze mutes many colors in a sunset, giving us a less brilliant show. The atmosphere then cleans the haze away overnight, leaving the air as clean as possible for a colorful sunrise. Of course, all beauty is subjective. For example, the same pollutants that dull the colors of the sunset also scatter its colors widely across the sky. This gives the sky a less orderly look. Many people consider this display to be more beautiful than a neat, restrained sunrise. But this man-made light show is not a natural representation of the setting sun's color and beauty. A sunrise, on the other hand, is a pure display of nature's colors. Sunrises are not just more beautiful than sunsets. According to some studies, watching sunrises can also improve your mood, and you will better appreciate the natural beauty around you every day. So, take some time to stop and watch the colors of a sunrise as they unfold. You might even feel inspired to pick up a camera, paintbrush, or pen to express how the experience made you feel. So let's take a moment and think about what argument is the author making in this passage. Well, there are a few clues that we need to point out to help us make this determination. First is the very last sentence of the first paragraph. The author specifically states what his or her main argument is. But overall, sunrises are more beautiful than sunsets. From there, the author goes in to provide details about why. So the author is providing evidence to support the claim that sunrises are more beautiful than sunsets. So what is that evidence? Well, the first one is in the second paragraph. It says, our eyes perceive them as more attractive, and then goes in to explain the science behind it. So we are being presented with facts to support this author's opinion. Paragraph 3 provides more science. The quality of the air also makes sunrises more beautiful than sunsets. And then goes on to explain how pollutants will affect the overall look of the sky. But then the author acknowledges that not everybody is going to agree with this claim because beauty is subjective. That means what one person thinks is beautiful, another person may not agree. He points out, or he or she points out, that the pollutants in the sky change the overall look. Somebody may see that as more beautiful. And then finally, he even points out that it's not just that sunrises are more beautiful, but that sunrises can improve mood, and then goes into describe some details to support that claim as well. So, what is the author's main claim or argument? In this case, it is our second statement. Sunrises are more beautiful than sunsets. The author establishes this claim in the first paragraph and then proceeds to provide details and evidence to support that claim. Before we close out our first lesson, let's take what we have learned about using details to identify the main idea or a specific claim that is made within the text, and apply it to some scientific informational texts. Let's take a look at this passage. Blunt-head cichlids are fish that live in Lake Tanganyika in eastern Africa. After a female blunt-head cichlid lays eggs, she holds the eggs in her mouth. Once they hatch, her young fish live in her mouth until they are old enough to survive on their own. This process, called mouth brooding, takes about 6 weeks. While mouth brooding, the female cichlid catches algae from the lake, but she does not swallow any. Instead, she feeds the algae to her offspring by holding it in her mouth for the offspring to eat. By eating the algae, the offspring grow larger and become faster swimmers that can escape predators more quickly. So based on the passage, why might feeding offspring during mouth brooding increase the reproductive success of a female blunt-head cichlid? Complete the claim below that answers this question and is best supported by the evidence. So the claim is that feeding offspring during mouth brooding increases the chances that the female's offspring will survive, the female will hold more offspring in her mouth, or the female will become weak and unhealthy. So based on the evidence in the passage, which statement best completes the claim and is supported by the evidence? Well, if we look at the second paragraph, while mouth brooding, the female cichlid catches algae from the lake, but she does not swallow any. Instead, she feeds the algae to her offspring. By eating the algae, the offspring grow larger and become faster swimmers that can escape predators more quickly. Okay, so since she is keeping her little baby fishies in her mouth and eating algae but not swallowing it, all of that nutrition is going to her offspring. And as they eat the algae, they grow larger. The bigger they are, the better swimmers they become. The better swimmers they are, the better chance they have of getting away from predators. And if they're able to get away from predators, it increases their chances of survival. So, feeding offspring during mouth brooding increases the chances that the female's offspring will survive. This seems to be the main claim that the author is making, and it is supported by the evidence in the text. The other two options, the female will hold more offspring in her mouth. Holding more offspring in her mouth doesn't necessarily increase those survival chances, because if the offspring are in her mouth, predators aren't going to get to them unless, of course, they eat the mother. We're concerned about their survival after the mouth brooding process. So therefore, mouth brooding increases the chances that her offspring will survive. The female will become weak and unhealthy. There's nothing in the text that indicates that. There's not really any evidence there that would support that, so that's a bad option. Our first option is the correct one. Let's practice with one more example. This time, we're going to be learning about a snail leech. The snail leech is a type of worm that often lives in freshwater streams. After a snail leech reproduces, it attaches its eggs to a rock at the bottom of the stream. The leech then flattens its body over its eggs to protect them. The leech protects its eggs until they hatch, which takes 4 to 7 days. During this time, the leech does not leave the eggs or eat. Water snails are predators that eat leech eggs. The snails easily eat eggs that are not covered by an adult leech, but snails cannot easily get to eggs that are covered by a leech. So why might covering its eggs with its body increase the reproductive success of a snail leech? So again, we are given a claim. We're asked to complete it with the statement that is best supported by evidence in the text. Covering its eggs with its body increases the chances that the leech will not eat for up to a week. Well, if the leech doesn't eat for up to a week, is that really going to increase the chances of the survival of the eggs? I don't know. We're not sure. Let's look at the other options. The leech will fight a water snail. Is this supported by the text? No, we don't get any indication from the text that the leech is going to fight the water snail, so that one can be ruled out. The leech's eggs will hatch. So we need to go back and ask ourselves this question. Why is the leech covering her eggs with her body? Again, when we consider what it's talking about, it's the survival of the eggs. Well, if the eggs survive, they hatch. And then the little baby leeches go on and grow up into big leeches and start the process over again. So, the claim that is best supported by the evidence is that covering its eggs with its body increases the chances that the leech's eggs will hatch. Because we are also told in the text what happens if the leech leaves the eggs. Well, water snails eat leech eggs. So the snails easily eat eggs that are not covered by an adult leech. So if the eggs aren't covered, the snails get a free meal of eggs. But snails cannot easily get to eggs that are covered by a leech. So, covering the eggs with its body increases the chances that the leech's eggs will hatch because the eggs will survive that 4 to 7 day process.